Welcome. These will be my thoughts on Amy's Dead End Dreamhouse, Season 1, Episode 4, Microwaved Misogyny. The episode is rated TVMA, so this video there will be spoilers for, possibly all 6 episodes, but certainly these first 4. Another episode that I absolutely loved. This was definitely the one episode that I had the easiest time understanding, and I don't know, maybe the video will reflect that. Yeah, I think we're just gonna... Right, we'll start with a recommendation for another fellow leftist YouTube video. So yeah, I think this time it's going to be Rebecca Watson's Cesar Chavez, abusive cult leader. And with that, let us get into the episode. I'm going to try to keep it more or less chronological. So, Amy returns with, she's been to art class, and I think the way her drawing, or her art, because technically by the end it's a painting, but the way her art, waxes and wanes over the course of the episode, it might be my favorite visual metaphor that does not involve any kind of puppeteering. At least if we're counting the mannequin friend as a puppet, which I think, technically there's at least a little bit of stop motion going on there. But this is stop motion when it only moves between takes. Whatever. I'm still calling it a puppet. Anyway, yeah. She's talking about like, look at what I made. And, we look at it and it's like, she did all that with that giant pencil and no, coloring. It's definitely impressive, but like, it's also actually, shit, I forget if that was the case from right away, but certainly at least one point in the episode, it's like, is she supposed to be a child? Because she has a job, which I guess in America doesn't necessarily mean you can't be a child anymore. But this does look like what a child would, I don't know if necessarily draw, but maybe color in. And then you look at the coloring and it's like, it's mostly colored in, but you didn't stay entirely within the lines, and I don't know. It was very funny. I quite like the way they used the art. And then there is the lightning strike. And yeah, as an atheist, it amused me that Amy keeps, looking up to the sky and, saying things like, thanks, nothing, and good timing, nothing. It just, yeah. Let's see. I think yeah, and oh my god, the way that so TV has a near-death experience, which now has me wondering if that's what happens every time I turn off the TV. I'm kidding, I have never actually turned that thing off. But the way that no one fucking deals with it for the entire episode, she just keeps, like, being really upset by it. And, like, it bookends the episode. One of the very first things is her near-death experience and her being really upset. And then there at the end, when Amy declares herself a god, which is obviously a very healthy thing to do, TV's like, why aren't you listening to me? There's nothing! But yeah. And the fact that she cares so much more about how Mike feels, which is genuinely, like, such a great comment on misogyny. Like, this idea that men are just inherently more important. Like, these are both Amy's friends, And, let's see, I think that does get us to so yeah, the French hat, beret. Okay, yeah, and that's also genuinely funny. This idea that she's gonna put on a beret, And nothing, other than that, she's just wearing the normal, I forget what that thing is called, but those, the pants with the suspenders thing, that she always does. But, that's, you know, yeah, how else are you going to do art? Don't be ridiculous. And yeah, he says, don't think I didn't notice, you look gorgeous. And then she says, well, you're always gorgeous, which, genuinely sweet thing to say. And, it's striking that balance, it's kind of adorable. And, you know, yeah, charming, nice thing to say to someone. And then, because of misogyny, he completely short circuits. Like, he can't handle it. And, like, this, I've known people who don't believe it. But if you meet enough cishet young men, maybe especially white, but I'm not entirely sure. I don't think I know enough about non-whites to speak authoritatively, but I've met my share of young cishet white men. And misogyny, to some degree or another, like, it's something we all have to reckon with. Like, we all have to realize, like, I'm willing to admit, I'd like to think by now I have recognized and processed all of it. But I know when I was younger, like, I've never hated women, but there were definitely some things that I thought or said that reflected that I grew up in a misogynistic patriarchal culture. And yeah, there are some men who will get mad if they're paid a compliment that they think of as, oh, but that positive thing you said, that is a woman or girl thing. That's not a man or boy thing. That women are gorgeous, men are handsome. And the next, yeah, and he's stewing about it all night. He's just sitting there, and I love the little, the visual, the text overlay, and the fact that it's like written in the font of microwave text, is great. And yeah, let's see, man plus gorgeous equals P word. And yeah, god damn it, now I sound like fucking Ben Shapiro. I'm just aware that there are a number of people who consider the P word something that should not be said in any context other than, a feminist woman using it, like reclaiming it. Like, in WAP, for example. I would hate for someone to be watching one of my videos and wince at a word I said. Anyway, I think that does bring us to the... But yeah, and the next morning, he's in a foul mood, and it's like, but nobody did anything to you. Like, we could understand if this was the near-death experience, like with TV. And, in the morning, like, she doesn't even remember, like, he says, yeah, he says the thing about, men are handsome, women are gorgeous. And she's like, okay, what? What? And then he says, no, but remember, you called me gorgeous. And she points out, yeah, I returned a compliment. Like, why is this a bad thing? And that's, bigotry, brain rot. Like, it makes people just think and say and do things that don't make any rational sense. Like, yeah, it was a compliment and it was clearly genuine, like you could very clearly see on Amy, she meant it. She was happy about being called gorgeous, and she returned the compliment twofold. And, that's, yeah, so much of the time when there is a problem, it is because, like, it's not exclusively bigotry, but it is like systems that don't actually serve us, that just bring us down, thought patterns, ways of thinking that just have, like, imagine warping a compliment into something negative. Like, once again, I 100% understand if it seemed like she was being sarcastic. Like, if he paid her a compliment and then she said, well, fuck you, you know, through a sarcastic comment, like, it's still not, he's still out of line, but we could at least understand why he's upset. But, yeah, and I really appreciate that the episode sits with that. It, like, spends some time on, like, I'm sorry, why is this even a problem? Like, what is going on here? Once again, at first she doesn't even realize what it is he's upset about. And, when he brings her down, suddenly the art doesn't look quite as good. And it's such a great, because there's so many things going on there. So one thing is, and, I can speak to this from experience because I wouldn't really say I do it anymore, but I used to make some, do some creative expression. I'm not gonna call it art. And, one of my exes was an artist. Yeah, like I was very careful to not say negative things to her about her art, which I also, to this day, I do think she was very, very talented. But, if someone puts down your art, suddenly it looks worse to you than before. It also works as a metaphor for her mood because, like, yeah, at first it's these flowers that are in bloom. Is that the term? I think it's something along those lines, and that's, yeah, that reflects, it's life affirming. It's joyous, and over the course of, yeah, the art decreases in quality and the flowers, some of the time at least, are like wilting and such. His misogyny is bringing them all down. And I think that might be when we get the ad break. And yeah, the Carrie talking about, like, well, I mean, I'll do the bumper. It's not, and even does it, like, we'll be right back after these messages. See, it's easy. But Carrie is terrified that some kid in a store is going to be upset because Carrie is not a puppet. And Carrie is the only non-puppet doing the bumper. And talks about, like, okay, no fringes, and, I'll say, look, no strings, motherfucker. What? Just, yeah. And the ad, that stung because I already really hated, and I'm pretty sure that, like, sometimes I read too much into things. I think this is a case where I'm not, but I'm not sure. I mean, this is about family vloggers, right? Like, this is about filming your kids and putting it online, and, like, we already know that that's really detrimental to a child's development. You're not letting them have a happy childhood. You're not letting them develop in a way that is going to be good for them. You're teaching them that they have to perform in order to get your love, which should, as a parent, which should be a word I forget that means, right, no, I remember it, unconditional, because this thing of, like, the kid, like, did a creative expression, and then the father's like, yeah, but you're not making me any money. And, it's late stage capitalism. Like, it's been a thing. This is also why a number of people will treat celebrities really badly. I'm afraid to forget who was it that's on. Now I remember. Yes, Elliot Sang again. Another video recommendation for this video. Fantastic video on the Zionist psyop against Chaperone. And yeah, those talk there about how Chaperone, like, I've really tried to understand, and I don't know, other than just a fucked up relationship to celebrity by fans, not her. I just barely understand why anyone thinks she did anything wrong. She was not both sidesing. She specifically said she's voting for Kamala and fuck Donald Trump. She didn't say fuck Kamala. She said fuck some of shit. I forget if it was the people or the policies, but some, for the Democratic Party. And I'm like, yeah, that's a perfectly reasonable thing to say. Like, have you fucking looked at them? Like, she's criticizing the two-party system. She's not saying don't vote. She's not saying vote conservative or who cares. She's just, if you actually look at, listen, I wish Kamala had won. But the idea that she's some, like, ideal candidate, just, like, I hope that one day there will be, I was optimistic for Bernie Sanders, I hope one day that the presidential nominee, honestly, how about for both parties, or maybe just more than two parties, would also be, if that were viable in America, which it could be. That's a decision, although it's made more by the most powerful, many of whom are white, cishet men. I'm not disparaging any. It's so frustrating how conservatives have tried to claim that it's minorities who rule the world when that's like literally so self-evidently on its face absurd. But yeah, it would be great if there were a non-zero number, at least one candidate for president who was really, really impressive. I'm not saying Zoran has been 100% perfect, but I remain very positive about him. Someone like that. Now, I mean, others have already pointed out, he had to make at least some compromises in order to get anything done, and he has gotten, certain things done that were, yeah. Anyway, I think, does that pretty much get us to the, yeah, I don't know if I've given enough love to the spectacular wig that I think it is the same one this time. When Amy, sorry, wow, when Maggie Mayfish plays this like 70s, you know, what's it called again? An ad, TV ad, you know, woman with just yeah, just fantastic job on that wig. But yeah, right, to finish my thought, yeah, so you know, part of the reason why people don't have boundaries with celebrities, which once again, like, Chapel Roan did a fantastic job, expressing frustration with that, and if you take issue with something she said, yeah, Elliot Sang Again's video does a really great job pointing out. I don't feel the need to reiterate. He nailed it. I have no notes. Yeah, the thing she actually said and what some people apparently heard when it clearly wasn't what she said. But yeah, the problem is that capitalism commodifies not just everything, every also everyone. You can't have an interaction and you can't see another human being as a person. You are perceiving them in the value gained or lost, and that's such a fucked up, you know, way to view the world. And listen, I used to struggle with that as well. It's something we all have to unlearn because, growing up in a capitalist country, and I mean, I'm Danish. Here in Denmark, it's nowhere near as bad as America. And yes, I have been to America. I'm not just speaking, you know, as an outsider. Now, but yeah, as such, we end up with shit like family vlogging, which I agree with those who say that basically just shouldn't exist at all. Don't put your kids on the internet. It's going to be there forever, and there are fucked up people out there watching. Now, I think that gets us to the other end of the right. And he again, is his name Ryan? Maybe the guy. Yeah, he previously played a waiter and Mr. Shadow, and here, he's the father, and he's just obsessed with the money. He says he loves the money more than his kid. Just yeah, that is such a depressing truism about a number of parents under capitalism. So yeah, yeah. So we get back to So they talk in the Dreamhouse about the situation with Mike and what to do, and yeah, the thing about like the using a fork, and then right in this episode they call the snake Quack instead of Quake, so it doesn't even rhyme with snake, which makes it even funnier as a reach for a name for a sidekick. But yeah, so Quack is, I don't know, maybe they were pronouncing it that way before, and I just didn't pick up on it until now. But Quack is like, you can't do that. Besides which, a fork isn't enough metal. Don't ask me how I know that. Yeah, I mean, I understand pleading the fifth. And then, she's like, well, how is this enough metal? And she's got fucking chainmail, and it's like, just this wonderful, because again, I love when this show does this thing of having the silliness of a kids show, because like that's the kind of thing you would see on one of these shows. I remember just enough from when I was a kid watching this kind of stuff. Yeah, they might just pull out fucking chainmail out of nowhere. Like what that has that been there the entire time, like right there, like either on or just under the no, yeah, she wasn't like bending over to pick it up, so I guess it was right next to her on the couch in that bit. Has that always been there and we just didn't notice somehow? Did it like manifest into being? Like what the fuck just happened? But also, she's not talking about, it's not this just like, you know silly thing that is like harmless the way that the giant pencil earlier was. No, she's talking about fucking murder. Because technically he's a sentient being. He's not even just like a pet or something. Like, she bounces ideas off him. He's actually, he understands the world around him as much as any misogynist does, I suppose. And just yeah. And you have yeah, TV is like, you know all in on the explosion. And let's see, yeah, and the thing about, like, we can't just go around exploding misogynists, and then there's something else that I'm not going to repeat, and then says for legal reasons. Just yeah. And then we see internalized misogyny with the you know TV becoming this kind of, you know she's being a little bit of a mean girl, which again feels silly to say about someone literally calling for homicide. But yeah, she's got like blackmail material on one of their friends because she wants to be more popular among, the leader of this friend group. And as a number of female feminists have noted, right, and please don't just take my word for it. If you want to listen to more, diverse voices, there's a link in the description box to a Google Doc where you can find, it's sadly still a work in progress, but a number of the minority voices that I listen to for my analysis to make sure that it is not secondhand as much as possible. And yeah, a number of female feminists have pointed out when women compete with each other for attention, whether it's theirs or a man's or, it's an expression of patriarchy and internalized misogyny because, like, a lot of women are socialized to be perfectly fine with having a lot of friends, which I can't help but notice, a number of misogynists really hate when their female partner goes out with her friends because they assume that she's going to go cheat on them, but it's okay for him to go out with his friends, even though, like, as others have already noted, some of the time when a man cheats, it's just because he's bored or he wants to feel like more of a man, which, like, I mean, if you've devoted yourself to a monogamous relationship, I feel like the, you know, as a man, I feel like the manly thing to do would be to be faithful to her. Whereas, when for a number of women, when they, if they cheat, it's because they are feeling unsafe or unappreciated. Anyway, but yeah, the the expressions of misogyny are also just, they fucking end me. Guy Dick's show about, true things about women, and the thing about, like, yeah, right, right. Some of those are actually early in the episode when to talk about, because she's like, "Are you upset because I didn't take you to the art thing?" And then he's like, "Ah, women don't know how to do art, men know how to do art." And then he mistakes O'Keefe for a man. And the thing about, like, the way that, he knew how to draw flowers. And, at this point, it's becoming very confusing because it's like, wait, okay, so what you're saying is that feminine things are only for women. It's not okay for a man to engage with those, and, flowers are seen as a feminine thing, which is also just such a silly, like, I'm sorry, where is the gender on these flowers? Like, flowers, like, there's a research has proven there is a positive mental health effect by having flowers in your home. It's just, yeah. But of course, it's this thing of, like, well, flowers grow, so checkmate. Obviously that means it's a woman thing. And so he's talking about, like, how, no, well, but women can't do art. And if art sometimes shows flowers, that must mean that flowers are good when men are the ones doing the art. And it's just like, you're going around, like, it's making zero sense. It's just this thing about, like, putting men on a pedestal and women under them, which makes no sense because we would be nowhere without women. Just yeah. And then he says that the flowers in the art looked like vaginas, and that's how you knew that they were done by a man, because women haven't even seen one. It becomes complete nonsense. Like, between mirrors and changing rooms, there are women out there who have indeed seen more vaginas than men. Just except for gynecologists, I guess. Anyway, I think that brings us to the doesn't that bring us to the guest, maybe? So yeah, Jamie, and this thing of, yeah, once again, some more exploration of misogyny. And they talk about how, when women, grow up in a misogynistic society, they, yeah, like, it becomes, among other things, the thing of, like, well, am I attracted to who I'm attracted to, or just who misogyny says I should find attractive? And the I can't really comment on. I don't think I'm familiar with any of the animated Now that I think about it, I'm not even sure all of them are animated, but the various pieces of media they talk about Danny Phantom and Jesus and Judas. I mean, I know who they are, the fictional characters from the Bible, but yeah, the apparently there was a show, I guess, or movie. I don't know. Did not grow up watching that, and I guess that pretty much brings us to yeah. Also the part where oh my god, the thing with like where he asked for something and she's like, "How about some gum?" I found some gum in some loose gum on the bus, and she picked it up because 5-year rule, and that's also a really effective visual metaphor. It I mean turns to ash or something along not literally, but it becomes this black you know thing in his mouth that leaves a bad taste in his mouth, and he's just sitting there getting angrier and angrier over receiving a compliment because he didn't like the specific word choice, which I also really appreciate. Here it's a man who can't take a compliment, which like the idea of oh, this person just can't take a compliment. That's something very frequently said by misogynists directed at women, because the man was called out for something that either wasn't a compliment or was inappropriate, even if it was, which is like, do you maybe want to consider if there's some truth to what is being communicated to you there? So part of the idea of a compliment is make the other person feel better. If you're trying to compliment someone and it makes them feel worse, not better, that might be a good time to consider, okay, so what about it did I get wrong? Because it had the opposite effect of what was intended. And but yeah, the part where she opens the thing, it says product of the 1960s. That's such a perfect way to put it, because like, yeah, it is true that there are microwaves that are that old. I liked Jamie saying, "Why is your microwave older than my mom?" And but it's also like, yeah, that particular phrasing, a product of the 1960s, because it is, I mean, it's not just misogyny, which would already be bad enough. It's like old school misogyny. It's some of the shit he says to Amy. It's like, who even says that anymore? Like, Jesus Christ, which is also such a great way to satirize it. Like, do you realize how silly you sound? Because, like, the thing is, some of the things said there are not things you necessarily hear much today, except for from people who remember the 1960s. But some of the things are not that dissimilar, and some of it is actually, in some groups of frequently conservatives, some of this is coming back. It's completely ridiculous. It didn't make sense back then either. This thing of like, oh, a woman's place is in the kitchen. I mean, if she is cleaning and taking care of the kids all day, why doesn't she deserve a break at the end of the day? Like, I know I've said it before. I'll say it again in later videos. If you are a straight man and you're in a relationship with a woman, cook for her at least when, just like, obviously make sure it's something that you know how to cook. Practice by yourself so that nobody else has to taste because sometimes it doesn't come out so well early on. I know that from experience. And, I don't know, if you just cannot cook very much yourself, like, find something that is very easy and just prepare that for her. just like don't expect her to always do everything in the house. Now, and the part with the imagine being a microwave and saying that you don't belong in a kitchen. And let's see, I think that does pretty much cover the yeah, I think that is when they go to, yeah, so they've decided they're going to try to talk to Mike. Or wait, no, actually I think this might be around the time when we get the second, so I guess it's not quite an ad break, but yeah, meditation. And again, like just meditation voice nails it. Just 100% pitch perfect. And, the thing about like, what was it? The problem is you. It's your nasally voice that you inherited from your mom. And the several times where he like imitates what the person meditating is saying, and just does the most insulting, demeaning voice, which again, like I've witnessed it with my own eyes and earballs. Like, yeah, there are misogynists who will like mimic women and just do that kind of ridiculous thing, just, yeah. Yeah, one of the problems of misogyny is a lot of misogynists will pay more attention to, oh, I don't like her voice or her tone, and not pick up on the words, because like in my experience, if you actually listen to what she's saying, the vast majority of the time she's being like exceedingly reasonable. Like, a number of misogynists love to say, oh, women just get mad about nothing and suddenly they're like yelling at you. See, I'm not going to pretend like I have never... I want to underline that it's been by accident, but yeah, there have been times in my life where I said or did something that upset a woman, and I'll admit I didn't always, realize it in the moment, but when I think back to it, I realize, yeah, shit, I really fucked up, and she was actually, in my personal experience, and I'm not saying this goes for all women. I appreciate that in places where misogyny and capitalism are even worse, it might be, worse. But so many women, they work so hard to be reasonable, be patient with us men. And when they get to the stage where they're like, for example, yelling, it's because the thing that they're upset about has been done so many times, including after they've clearly communicated that they want us to stop, why they want us to stop, and what they would like us to do instead. Now, but yeah, the entire meditation thing was just so spot on. Let's see. I think and you are the problem. But yeah, so they talk to Mike, and they're like, well, this is making things worse again. And so they start talking about like maybe we should just take him out. And yeah, TV is like laughing at the jokes that don't make sense. And she does talk about the near-death experience again, but it's also in part, internalized misogyny. There are, women who will like laugh at the jokes, make jokes of their own, and such. And yeah, as a number of female feminists have noted, it doesn't serve them in the long run. They will eventually be downgraded. Like there are a number of misogynists who will tolerate a misogynistic woman, but only until they have enough power and control in the situation that they don't need to any longer. Then they will start treating that woman as badly as they treat the women who are not engaging in any misogyny, or only minimal. Anyway, I think I appreciate there's a school of thought that says it's impossible under patriarchy to be 100% not misogynistic. What we can do is try to keep it to such a minimum that it is not a a problem anymore. I mean, obviously, ideally, we'd be able to get rid of it 100%. Now, I think that does bring us to... I feel like there's one more thing I really wanted to make sure to say. Yeah. So they do manage to... Yeah, they re-electrocute him, and he is better again, and the art came out the very best. And and she's like, yeah, I know, it's terrible. And no, like, look at it. And TV is like, I can't believe it. No, like, I can't believe it. Are you a fucking liar? And let's see, the post credits bit of him still super excited about the money, and the kid just walking into the corner and just like, oh my god, it's yeah, that's so fucked up. And let's see, I think that does pretty much. But yeah, I thought the episode did a fantastic job of exploring how we are all affected by misogyny, and it's, if you are not like realizing it and processing it, you probably have at least some misogyny, and that is something that has to be, yeah, it's, we're all works in progress. Perfection is something to be strived towards. We're never quite going to reach it, but life is all about improving yourself. It's one of the, like, research bears this out. Working to improve yourself is one of the things that makes people happier. If you are stagnating, that can really, that feels bad. Like that's our brain really does not like that. And I guess I'll just very briefly note. So some of the other things include community, giving and receiving love, stability, including financially. Yeah, I think that is just about everything for this episode. Yeah, really love the thing with the so the oh wait, did I want to say something else? I guess I might finish up by that particular. So I'm real quick gonna fast forward mentally through the entire episode and see if there was anything at all that let's see, but yeah, but basically, like, misogyny, I think the only part of this, like, yeah, it doesn't particularly appear in the Carrie bumper or that ad for the, monetize your family, but it even appears in the meditation, and that, again, like, it's so beautifully, because the thing, meditation is supposed to be an escape from all this, yeah, all the things that are, making life harder. And for it to even creep into meditation, that really shows how pervasive it is, how it is, like, currently inescapable. Like, we have to fix this culture in order to, yeah. But yeah, other than that, like, all of every character that appears within the, like, story of the episode, including, neighbor Jamie, is all of them are, you know, in some way or another affected by misogyny. And I think that does pretty much, let's see. Yeah, once again, the remote is treated as a telephone, and yeah, Amy calls the phone and gets the and is told what to do, and we just hear her say, "That's reasonable," and then we see it's fucking intense electricity, But then she ends it with, "I love you," and it's like, I just want there to be an outtake where we hear the voice, like we hear a brief pause and the voice on the other end of the phone going, I think we should see other people. But the let's see. Right, I also really like the thing about, well, you were electrocuted. Imagine not being electrocuted and still saying shit like that. And the yeah, once again, Bill absolutely nails the performance. And it's also one of those cases where, he has the age, and you can hear that in his voice, to play someone who has the kind of 1960s misogyny. Like, I think it would feel silly if they tried to have Ryan, deliver lines like that. It would just be like, that's a little bit, try hard, which I suppose, okay, it would fit some real-life misogynists. Anyway, I think that pretty much, yeah. Let's see. So yeah. Once again, Quake, when Quack mentions, there's a story from the past, and yeah. Once again, some part of me does hope that at one point in the future, I mean, at some point they could just do an entire episode that is 100% like do like a clip show parody. Just do an episode where it's clips that we haven't seen before, but they're acting like we have, and it's just like us seeing, like, what happened. Like, why does Quack know how much metal it takes for a microwave to, what happened in that zoo, etc.